As the day ended, the sun set over the calm Sea of Galilee, casting a warm glow across the water. Gentle waves lapped against the boat, creating a peaceful and serene scene. Jesus, standing on the shore, instructed his disciples to get into the boat and cross the lake. He chose to remain behind, seeking solitude and spending time in prayer on a nearby hillside. As the disciples rowed away from the shore, the sky grew darker and the first stars appeared. The boat seemed tiny against the vast expanse of the lake, but they pressed on, obeying their master's command. Meanwhile, Jesus found a quiet spot on the hillside and knelt in prayer under the starlit sky. The night was still, with a gentle breeze rustling through the trees as he communed with his Father in heaven. As the disciples ventured further, the peaceful evening gave way to a storm. Dark clouds gathered and the wind picked up, causing ripples to form on the water's surface. As the storm approached, before long, the disciples found themselves battling a fierce storm. The calm waters had turned rough, and strong winds whipped across the lake, making it increasingly difficult for them to row. Jesus, still in prayer on the hillside, sensed that his disciples were in trouble. He looked up towards the lake and saw the storm raging, feeling deep concern for those struggling on the water. Determined to help, Jesus rose from his place of prayer and began descending the hill. His face remained calm and resolute, even as the stormy lake loomed in the distance, threatening to overwhelm the boat. With unwavering faith, Jesus stepped onto the water, and the waves seemed to part beneath his feet. Despite the storm raging around him, he walked steadily towards the boat, his eyes fixed on his disciples. In the midst of the storm, the disciples, exhausted and afraid, saw a figure walking on the water towards them. Fear gripped their hearts, and they cried out in terror, believing they were seeing a ghost. Then, through the howling wind and crashing waves, they heard a familiar voice. "Take courage. It is I, don't be afraid," Jesus called out, his words cutting through the chaos and bringing a sudden peace. As the disciples recognized it was Jesus, their fear turned to awe and amazement. Peter, always eager and impulsive, was the first to respond, his heart filled with faith and a strong desire to be near his master. Peter leaned over the side of the boat and shouted, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." His voice was filled with hope, faith, and daring. Reaching out across the stormy waves, Jesus looked at Peter with a gentle smile and extended his hand. "Come," he said, his voice steady and reassuring, even as the storm continued to rage around them, offering a calm invitation. With his eyes fixed on Jesus, Peter cautiously stepped out of the boat. To his amazement, his foot held firm on the water, and he took a bold step forward, his faith allowing him to walk on the waves, step by step. Peter walked towards Jesus, his faith sustaining him. But as he noticed the towering waves and the furious wind, his confidence began to waver, and doubt slowly crept into his heart. As fear overtook him, Peter began to sink into the water. Panic filled his heart, and the storm seemed to grow even fiercer. Desperately, he reached out towards Jesus and cried, "Lord, save me!" Immediately, Jesus reached out and grasped Peter's hand, pulling him up from the sinking water. His expression was firm yet filled with compassion as he said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" As Jesus held Peter, he asked gently, "Why did you doubt?" His words were filled with love and concern. As he spoke, the storm began to calm, the winds died down, and the waves became still. Together, Jesus and Peter walked back to the boat on the calm waters. The other disciples watched in awe, their faith strengthened by the miraculous events they had just witnessed. Jesus and Peter climbed back into the boat, where the disciples gathered around them, relieved and awed. The storm had completely subsided, leaving the lake calm and serene once more. The disciples, overwhelmed by what they had witnessed, bowed their heads in reverence and worshiped Jesus. They realized they were in the presence of the Son of God, who had power over the wind and waves. The boat glided smoothly across the now calm waters towards the distant shore. The night was peaceful again, with stars reflecting in the still surface of the lake, marking the end of the storm. As they sailed, Jesus sat quietly in the boat, his eyes filled with love and understanding. The disciples reflected on the miracle they had just experienced, in the powerful lesson in faith they had learned. The boat finally reached the shore, and the disciples stepped out onto the sand, still in awe of the night's miraculous events. As dawn began to break, they knew their faith had been forever changed.